I don't need it. I just
Morning of July 5th, 2025. We are here at the Old Base Oval for a very special event, a reading of our nation's Declaration of Independence, sponsored by the Valcour Battle Chapter Sons of the American Revolution. We're in what is known as now as Veterans Memorial Park. We have Mr. Craig Russell. Looks like he'll be introducing everybody. The scouts will be bringing up the colors. The 249th anniversary. And let's listen to what's going on here.
Good morning.
morning. Morning.
12 score and 9 years ago, the Declaration of Independence was written. Cal Castine and I were talking, and I had mentioned to him the fact that my inspiration for my prelude to the Declaration today was actually Abraham Lincoln, who said 80 and 7 years ago. And Cal goes, how many score now? And so we went and we did our calculating on our fingers. And there we go. So we got 12 score, that's 240 years, plus 9 years. So next year it would be 10 years. 12 score and 10 years. I'd ask the scouts to post our colors, if you would.
If the trees allow it.
And those that are able to stand, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There you go. I will read an invocation. Almighty God, who inspired the hearts of our fathers to set forth the independence of these United States, we give all glory and praise to you, the author of our liberty, and the sure defense of our safety. We pray that your grace may be enabled to build wisely upon the foundations of freedom and peace, that we may hold our liberties in due subjection to your law, and in all things seek that righteousness which exalts the nation. O God, bless our Declaration of Independence celebration today. Amen. I'd like to introduce Mr. Hughes, Wendell Hughes, the mayor. You will come up and say something?
Sure,
sir?
thanks. Been a busy weekend. I don't know if everybody had a chance to get out yesterday for the parade, but I think City of Plattsburgh staff did a great job. So, good morning. On behalf of the City of Plattsburgh, I warmly welcome you to this special reading of the Declaration of Independence by Mr. Kruger. We reflect on the powerful words that help shape the course of history. These words, bold, visionary, and courageous, remind us of the enduring principles of liberty, equality, and self-government that continue to define the American spirit. Here in Plattsburgh, a city with its own proud history of patriotism, resilience, we are reminded that freedom is not simply a gift, but a responsibility, one that must be upheld and renewed with each generation. Let us listen closely, not just with our ears, but with our hearts, as we revisit the Declaration, not as a document of the past, but as a living call to justice and unity. Thank you to the Valcour Battle Chapter Sons of the American Revolution for putting this on, and please, and everybody else that was involved, the scouts and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a letter to read from Congresswoman Castine. to thank the Valcour Battle Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution, for the invitation to attend today's event and send my greetings to all those who are in attendance. I regret that I am unable to participate in this event, which has now become an annual ceremony commemorating the founding of our nation. The first documented reading of the Declaration of Independence took place on July 8, 1776 at the State House Yard in Philadelphia. The very next day, the Declaration was delivered to George Washington in New York. Washington ordered it to be read to the Continental Army to inspire them in their fight against the British. I am grateful that 249 years later, the Sons of the American Revolution keep the memory of those early days of the Republic alive through events like this one. I hope that you all enjoyed today's event and express my gratitude again to the Valcour Battle Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution, for planning and this reading. Sincerely, Elise Pence-McConaughey, Member of Congress. Next, I'd like to introduce Billy Jones to come up.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here with all of you today in what I understand is the fourth time,
I believe it's
fourth
the fourth.
consecutive time we've done this. And dropped my program.
I get it.
That's all right. And I just think it's important that we do not only celebrate and recognize this important document that was the framework for the founding of our great nation here. And it's always great to see our children here, young people here, to have them experience and to recognize how important this Declaration of Independence is. I want to thank the Valcour Battle Chapter Sons of the American Revolution for putting this event on, because I really do think we need to continue to tell the story of this country, of our beloved place we call home. Now that we sometimes live in a divided country, I think it is important, just as important now, more than ever, to understand what the Declaration of Independence was. Justice for all and freedom for all. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody that organizes this and puts this on year in and year out. And what a wonderful job this is in recognizing our beloved country. And we are embarking on the 250th anniversary of our country. And it's just important to remember back to the framers of our country, how important it is to continue to celebrate the rich history of this area. The mayor had mentioned how important it is to celebrate the history of what our area had to do with framing our country. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for organizing this again, and wonderful job.
Thanks. I'd like to introduce, I'm going to go a little bit out. Calvin Castine, representing Clinton County. Wants to say a few words.
Yeah, there will be a few words. I hadn't prepared anything, so off the cuff, I was standing here, I'm thinking back to the origin of Clinton County, March 7th, 1788. Only 12 years after that Declaration of Independence was written. If we look here in 1776, we probably wouldn't see too many faces around, obviously. But we have to remember that when that Battle of Valcour happened, all those ships came through on our Rouse's Point shore, our Chazy shore, our Beekmantown shore, and the Plattsburgh shores. And so this whole county is very much involved in the history of this country. And I know up in Champlain, we look at Point of Fair, and in 1760, in the French and Indian War, Rogers Rangers were there. So a lot happened in and around this county, even though it wasn't formed until 1788. Plattsburgh city was here already, 1783. And in 1788, they formed the Clinton County, and from Clinton County came Essex and Franklin, and so we've got a lot of history here, and we ought to appreciate all of it, especially coming in this coming year.
Thank you, Chad. Last but not least, Michael Cashman, Town of Plattsburgh.
Cleanup crew is what we call it.
I think all the other speakers really hit the sentiments of what today is about, so I'd like to comment a little bit different. As we stand here as a community, we often don't take enough time to lean into our own history in our backyard, right? We forget about the stories here. As Calvin hit on, the North Country has been part of the preface of the American story, and then every chapter thereafter. Every war, every engagement, we have sent men and women of the North Country to serve this great nation. One of the most pivotal examples of that is the Battle of Valcour, obviously the Battle of Plattsburgh, but we are standing here now 30 years after the former Air Force Base closed. We have a lot to be proud of. Let's make sure that sometimes community members don't feel comfortable calling themselves historians, but we have a responsibility to tell the stories, the American stories, that bind us and collect us as a people together. So on behalf of the town of Plattsburgh and the region, I want to thank everybody from the SAR to our scouts for making such a wonderful day where we can come together and learn a little bit something, also share. But the message that I also want to say is anybody that's a veteran, would you mind raising your hand if you're a veteran? Anybody here? Thank you for your service. And I also want to keep our hearts and minds with them and anybody in active service. God bless them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I introduce our reader, I spent the winter trying to figure out what I could say to introduce the Declaration. So I came across, what do we mean when we refer to the Declaration of Independence? We know that the Declaration pronounced that the 13 colonies were independent from Britain. It goes on to a long list of grievances against King George that justified the separation. Yet, there are three broad principles stated in the first two paragraphs. Those stated grievances were certainly important, but one needs to delve into the broad principles that spoke of the very nature of American democracy and essential to the success of the revolution. You've got to remember, one thing is to say you want to be independent. Another thing is to make it happen. These principles would change the world. At the time, the 13 colonies had many differences among themselves. But to succeed, the colonies would have to unite, overcoming their prejudices. And in the first sentence of the Declaration, Jefferson wrote, "It was self-evident truth that the Americans were one people." He states that the Americans across geographic, ethnic, religious, language, and class differences were united. The second principle was more complicated in a nation where slavery was extensive. It was self-evident truth that all men were created equal. Americans needed to know that in a world where birth determined your place in life, Americans were fighting for equality for all. The question was, what would replace the monarchy? Jefferson answers, "Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Our new government would be formed by the people's representatives." Abraham Lincoln would refer to the government as of the people, by the people, for the people. He derived this from the Declaration. Those first paragraphs define political freedom, national unity, built on equality of citizens with a government of their own making, responsive to their needs. Today we still struggle with these principles. Questions remain. What makes us one people? Is what unites us more important than what divides us? What does equality mean? How do we maintain a government of the people? Lincoln's words at Gettysburg hold true to this day. It is for the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work and to the great task remaining before us, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. These ideas were inspired 87 years ago prior to his speech. It is fitting that we continue to renew ourselves as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And after that being said, I'm introducing John Kruger, who will read the Declaration for you.
Actually, I'll do a little bit more than that. And because it's going to take 20 minutes or so to do it, I appreciate everybody standing at attention, but if you want to sit down, the second time we did this, we had someone faint. So I just assume you be comfortable as upright, and I'll leave it at that. 249 years ago, in the early summer, I also have a loud voice, and I love captive audiences of intelligent people. 249 years ago, in the early summer of 1776, the Continental Congress was meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a lofty ground floor chamber of the State House, now known as Independence Hall. On June 11th, Congress appointed a committee composed of 5 men: Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, John Adams of Massachusetts, Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, and Robert Livingston of New York, to prepare a draft Declaration of Independence. To pick up on what some of my colleagues have already said, 2 of the 5 men had direct ties to the Champlain Valley. Benjamin Franklin had recently returned from a challenging diplomatic mission to Montreal over Lake Champlain. Robert Livingston's brother-in-law, Richard Montgomery, had been killed 6 months earlier storming Quebec. The 5 colleagues convened in Franklin's quarters out of respect for the 70-year-old senior statesman who was suffering with gout. John Adams remembered a debate on who should draft the document, with Franklin being the unspoken favorite due to his international reputation. Franklin declined, however, citing his health and perhaps more importantly his general unwillingness to draft documents subject to committee edits. From the outset, Jefferson assumed responsibility for drafting the Declaration. The 33-year-old Virginian clarified that his intention was not to be original, but rather to place before mankind the common sense of the subject. Working quickly, Jefferson shared his draft with Adams and Franklin, who made several alterations. In the original draft, certain truths were described as sacred and undeniable. Franklin suggested using the term self-evident as a simpler and more straightforward alternative, to which Jefferson readily agreed. The Committee of 5 presented their draft to Congress on June 28th, an event depicted in John Trumbull's iconic painting that's on the front of your program, the Declaration of Independence. I bet when you looked at that, you assumed it represented a signing ceremony that took place on July 4th, 1776. You were wrong. In actuality, there wasn't a signing ceremony on July 4th or on any other day. The same day that Jefferson's draft was submitted to Congress, more than 100 British ships carrying General Sir William Howe and 9,000 troops were sighted off the Long Island coast. On July 2nd, Congress voted 12-0 for American independence, with New York abstaining. The New York delegation was still waiting instructions from Albany. Big surprise, huh?
Been there.
Yeah, I feel for you. During the following 2 days, as General Howe's army arrived on Staten Island, delegates made 85 specific changes to Jefferson's draft, adjusting or revising more than 20% of the text. Jefferson had written, "We might have been a great and free people together." Although his colleagues deleted the phrase, the sentiment was genuine. During the proceedings, Franklin leaned over to offer Jefferson reassurance, noting that this was precisely why he avoided drafting documents subject to committee edits. The delegates completed their work and sent the final draft to the printer on July 4th, and the printer marked that date on the top of the published version. Many delegates signed early in August, but there was no single day when all the delegates collectively affixed their names to the parchment copy. That parchment copy reads as follows. Action of Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, then a decent respect to the opinion of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. You'll recognize this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing inevitably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the condition of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent upon his will alone for the tenure of their office and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new officers and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond the seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English law in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries, so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the humblest terms, Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, and peace friends. This is what you've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the vicissitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You will all be enormously relieved to know that New York made the vote for independence unanimous on July 9th. Although revolutions have occurred throughout human history, the act of a population explaining and justifying their decision to remove their rulers and establish a new government based on their own authority was unprecedented. As Craig alluded to earlier, the Declaration of Independence has come to be regarded as the foundational statement of America's purpose. And Abraham Lincoln reflected upon its significance in his Gettysburg Address in the midst of the Civil War. I would propose to you that Thomas Jefferson's 35 words are considered among the most pivotal in American history, potentially in modern human history. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence served as America's national birth certificate. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Are we going to do your activity, Bud? Before we go that far, I would like to recognize those that helped us enact this today. Could the scouts come up, please, to be recognized? Thank you very much. And scout leaders also for guiding them here. it goes without saying before they get on this activity, you know, they want to do this. We have two people. I'm here. I belong to the Sons of the American Revolution, and I'm here to dress funny and to MC.
To dress appropriately, Craig. To dress
However,
appropriately.
I understand, John, but we have two that co-chair this event that they have to be recognized. We have Bud Smith and Bill Ferguson. Without them, this doesn't happen. Come on up.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending our event today. If you haven't already, check out some of the items that we have at our table as well. When John reads the Declaration of Independence, it is so powerful that I think we need to have one more salute for John and the Declaration of Independence. No, you jumped the gun. You jumped the gun. Because what I would like to do is I would like to salute the Declaration and John in a manner that was probably done back in 1776. People didn't clap like we usually do. They didn't say hip hip hooray, but what they said was huzzah. And so I would ask you to join me in just a moment with 3 consecutive huzzahs. And if you really want to make it more powerful, you pump your fist in the air at every one of those huzzahs. So are we ready? I'm sorry.
If I, just a suggestion from the peanut gallery back here, you should include Jefferson, and I'd even trade my spot for Jefferson.
Okay, all right. I understand, and that sounds good. So on the count of 3 huzzahs. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now I have a question for everyone. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you have heard of this person. And we are excluding John from this little voting here. The person's name is Button Gwinnett. Raise a hand. How many have heard of Button Gwinnett? Bill, you see anybody? I don't. Here, no. What about John Hancock? Ooh, yes. Well, everybody knows John Hancock because, as you recall, he was the signer of the Declaration that said, "I'm going to write my name so big that the King of England will not have to use his spectacles to see my signature." And so that's why he wrote it that large. But there were 55 other signers of the Declaration of Independence. And Bill and I would like to read their names so you can hear their names. And if you Google any of these names, you'll find that every one of them has a fascinating story. And I would encourage you to do that. So from the state of New York, the signers were William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, and Lewis Morris.
From the state of Virginia, George White, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lighthorse Lee, and Carter Braxton.
From North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, and John Penn.
From the state of Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, and Charles Carroll of Carrollton.
The signers from Pennsylvania were the following: Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, and George Ross.
From the colony of Massachusetts Bay, John Hancock, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Kane, Elbridge Jerry.
The signers from Connecticut were the following: Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, and Oliver Wolcott.
From New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark.
Delaware signers: Caesar Rodney, George Reed, and Thomas McKean.
From Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins and William Ellery.
Georgia: Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, and George Walton.
From the state of South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., and Arthur Middleton.
And finally, from the colony of New Hampshire, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple, and Matthew Thornton. And these are the 56 signers of the Declaration. Thank you very much. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I read the benediction, I would like to thank our honored guests for attending and saying their words today. And thank you all for attending. It makes more sense when we have people in attendance. It makes us happy to do this. And again, please be here next year, 250th. It'll be a really big celebration for us. I'd like to read the benediction. Almighty God, grant us your mercies as we part. In the coming days, help us to reaffirm our roles as citizens of the United States. Keep before us the privations and sacrifices of our ancestors who freely gave themselves in the cause of liberty and democracy. Endow us with their resolve, strengthen us as we pledge ourselves to the preservation of the freedoms bestowed by your hand. Amen. At this point, I would like to ask the scouts to retire the colors. If our dignitaries and scouts, if you would like to stay for a second, we're going to take a group picture of everybody together, if we could. I thank you all for attending. Enjoy your day. Beautiful, beautiful weather. John?
I get a quick announcement.
Yes.
This is going to be followed by a walking tour of the base. I used to do it. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of history here. You can't have a better day. The best day of the weekend. You're already here. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, that was the reading of the Declaration of Independence, sponsored by Valcour Battle Chapter Sons of the American Revolution on this July 5th, 2025. Craig Russell doing a great job as the MC. Thanks for watching and supporting viewer-supported local television, hometown cable. As always, we are happy to bring you what's best about our North Country area. Thanks for watching.
That's exactly what it's